think when you're talking about negatively geared properties, one of the key things that a high income earner should do, or they are doing, is typically they will go for land banking opportunities, or what we call it is, properties with, multiple exit strategies or development potential properties, right? Where, they are thinking about, okay, I'm going to transition my portfolio into property development and, create whole or sell retail. And that's where you're mixing the best of the both worlds. You're getting the depreciation benefits, you're getting the equity, you're getting the growth, and you have an opportunity to scale up and transition yourself into a property developer or a business of property. So, yeah. You're listening to Help Me Buy Property podcast, powered by Investor Partner Group. We help improve lifestyles by building scalable and sustainable generational wealth and passive income streams. We do this via our ecosystem that is a one-stop shop to all property investment needs. From evidence-based, data-driven buyers agency, industry-renowned portfolio reviews and property strategies, property development with and for clients, tax, SMSF, business structures advisory, and cash flow real estate. Everything we do is to help people achieve financial independence and not just basic financial freedom by using property as a tool and as a medium. Presently, we've launched Australian Property Academy, where we are training and teaching buyers agents, property advisors, property strategic partners, and secrets to finding investor-grade properties to astute investors. Connect now to experience it yourself, or drop in a line below at info@helpmebuy.com.au to get more information. Be kind and happy investing. Today, we are going to talk about 5 key ways high income earners effectively use leverage and borrowing to grow their wealth. Now, we're talking about high income earners. We're talking about business owners. You're talking about high income earners like doctors, people who have a lot of cash flow to work with. Okay, so if this is something that you're not and you're aspiring to be, then definitely stick around. But if this is something that you are, and you are a person who has high cash flow, low time, then this is definitely an episode for you. Now, before we open the floor, drum roll, let's introduce and walk in Miss Cheryl. Miss Cheryl, how are you today?
Hello, I'm here going... That's all the high income earners going, buy it all. This is... Again, another cool episode here to talk about. I love how we are able to, I guess our goal is to address all the different aspects of property investing and I guess development as well, and explore all the different strategies. And this one here is, high income earners, and we're making the assumption it might be someone who's a high income earner, earns good money, is not necessarily looking to leave their job in the short term, but maybe in the long term have at least obviously that retirement fund there. So high income earners are probably people that are earning 150,000, doctors, your IT people who are earning,
rolling in cash. Yeah.
Your dentist, and you find generally these are certain professions, all right? There might be business owners as well, but let's just talk about certain professions where income is good, but really sort of not very much time to really spend on looking at what's happening with their portfolios. Yeah. However, again, having the right sort of advice and the right team in place, they can build healthy portfolios that create generational wealth and also set them up for retirement as well, right? So, even though you might be a high income earner, it doesn't mean that you don't put in other avenues in place. Don't put all your eggs into one basket, as we always say. Diversify, and you can diversify through investing in general. And obviously one of the things we talk about here is investing in property.
A lot of high income earners that I talk to on a day-to-day basis, I always find that they are the most time poor professionals, right? And so while they are making a lot of money, they are the one who miss out the most on the property market because, one, they don't have time. Two, even if they have time, they invest that time back into the business or something that they have passionate about because that's where the money is coming from. So of course their ROI are quite significantly larger there. Well, but then sooner and later they realize that, if I am going to retire, then I can't keep earning money through here. And so what is my passive income stream? And that's where the revelation comes to them, right? As to, oh, I need to start thinking about this. And it's very interesting. It's the same cyclical nature of events where you're a high income earner, you're time poor, you haven't thought about property for the last 10 years, and you've been a high income earner, you're sitting on a pile of cash, and you're playing a Duffy duck, going into that, pile of cash.
What do you Daffy Duck pumping into the pile of money, like a pot of money?
That's it. That's basically it, right? That's what they do. And so I always basically use that analogy when I'm playing it in my head that, that's what you've done. You're a Duffy duck where you are swimming in cash, where you haven't really done anything with this cash, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Cash when we talk about cash or equity, you might have purchased some properties or a property in generally, sort of premium suburbs that have gone up, and you're sitting in equity, but you're not really sure what to do with it.
Yes.
This is the episode for you, right? Okay, let's rock and roll. Strategy number 1.
The first and the foremost, where a lot of these people default to, and that's where their accountants ask them to basically default to, is, hey, buy a negatively geared property because you're paying a ton of tax, and so because you're paying so much tax, you need a negatively geared property to basically offset that taxes to get some money back from the ATO. While there is nothing wrong in going for a negatively geared property, there is 2 stereotypes or 2 of the defaults that they fall down to, right? One is that they end up buying apartments or house and land packages because they're purely going from a depreciation perspective, and that's what they default to because they're like, oh, I need to maximize my deductions, right? And they never really think about established properties, and that's where it does not really help them from a net wealth perspective. The second key thing when you're talking about negatively geared properties is that they hit their ceiling quite quickly, right? Because, while they are rich on cash flow, the banks have a certain risk appetite. And so it's an amazing strategy. There's nothing wrong with the strategy, especially, with high income earners, they would always focus on premium suburbs. They don't go around investing in regional areas or lower price points, but there is nothing wrong in mixing and matching, having that strategy in place, making sure that, you are maximizing this to a certain extent is quite important. You're going for a negatively geared property, make sure that you add exit strategies to that exit, investment property as well. And so think about don't just, go around thinking about depreciation benefits on its own.
Yeah. And you raised the point there. I want to stress is it's mixing and matching as well. So don't buy a whole portfolio of negative geared properties.
Yes.
Because that's not diversifying. And so you want the whole idea of negative geared properties is not just the negative gearing. You really want to be buying generally where the negative geared properties are typically in those premium suburbs where the yields tend to be lower. However, generally the capital growth tends to be higher.
Yes.
As well. So you'll be looking at your strategy may be that you're purchasing that negative geared property knowing that it's in a premium suburb, that you'll probably get some really good equity uplift and that you're going to use that equity uplift for something else.
Yes. Yes.
Preferably something that's not negative geared or more neutrally geared or positively geared.
And you don't need to do it with a big bang, right? A lot of these high income earners naturally default to, I need $1 million property, or I'm going to buy a $1.5 million property. Understand that the average price point of the property still sits below, $1 million mark. When you look at, majority of the suburbs, talk about Queensland, Adelaide, Perth, right? Forget Melbourne and Sydney because the yields are quite significantly poor in both of these areas. So where the gentrification is really happening is at the lower price points. And so you would have a better opportunity of a $600,000 or $700,000 property turning into $1 million property versus a $1.5 million property turning into a $5 million property. That does not really happen because at a higher premium price point, usually it's mature growth. It's not exponential growth. And so it's important to mix and match so that you're catching exponential growth and mature growth at the same time.
And so with negative geared properties, we have addressed this before, but just on a really, really high level, what typically happens and why people are drawn to it in high income. I just want to touch on that a little bit for those of you who are going, what does that mean? So you may be earning, let's say you're earning $200,000 or whichever, you're being taxed on the highest tax bracket, and say you don't have any other tax benefits, you don't have like car leases or whatever other benefits that you have. And so you're paying an absolute chunk of, what's the highest tax rate? 45, 47, 45%. So you're paying 45% of your income in tax. So why don't the whole idea of negative gearing is to use part of that tax in a more maximizing a more effective way of possibly, to a certain extent, paying down your property as well. It reduces your tax rate effectively. So that's why negative gearing is attractive to high income earners. But again, get some sort of cash flow calculator done with your accountant. Talk to them about varying your income tax as well, so that helps with your cash flow. Because if you're used to a certain lifestyle and all of a sudden you've got negative geared property and you've gone from $20,000 a month to $5,000 in your bank, you'll be like, what the?
Yeah,
you don't necessarily want to do that.
Yes.
So just where still ensure that even though you might be earning good income, it doesn't mean you're doing it sort of without some level of consideration there.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book. It's easy to read. It has a lot of stories. It has a lot of examples. And it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Mohsin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book. And this is a good segue. Look, I think when you're talking about negatively geared properties, one of the key things that a high income earner should do, or they are doing, is typically they would go for land banking opportunities, or what we call it is, properties with multiple exit strategies or development potential properties, right? Where they are thinking about, okay, I'm going to transition my portfolio into property development and create whole or sell retail. And that's where you're mixing the best of the both worlds. You're getting the depreciation benefits, you're getting the equity, you're getting the growth, and you have an opportunity to scale up and, transition yourself into a property developer or a business of property. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's strategy number 2?
That's strategy number 2, yeah. So property development plays a really, really big part for high income earners. Because, you have the servicing, you have the cash to support a property development. You need a negatively geared property. And so naturally, when you're thinking about a premium suburb negatively geared property, think about how can you create an exit strategy for yourself and transition yourself into property development and create more profits out of these properties and create more net wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, and I think we've talked about that development side of things quite a bit in our other episodes. So have a look at that, how you can add value and so on. And the third one, and we've also talked about this in quite a bit of detail, is looking at different types of assets that are a bit more sort of commercially geared. So, you might be looking at pure commercial assets like industrial, warehousing, retail, or even things like which are a bit sort of pseudo commercials like rooming houses, which they all tend to be quite good for depreciation depending on the age of it, and they're high cash flow assets. Typically, like commercial, that does require a larger deposit. However, you can fund it. The way that you fund it is it's based on the income of the property as opposed to
the lease back. Yes, the lease back options.
The lease back as well.
And I think it makes a lot more sense. I think a lot of high income earners they don't consider commercial as a place to default as well. So while you're building your property portfolio to do negatively geared properties, what you don't want to do is use your own disposable income to support your property portfolio. And that's where, some of these properties with high cash flow comes into place, where you're getting the benefits of the both world. You're getting the depreciation through commercial or rooming houses. You're getting, or block of units typically. I think block of units is another amazing example where, you're not exposing yourself to, 4 different council rates and 4 insurances, and you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting, commercial valuations on the residential block value, and you can go down the path of doing subdivisions there in the future too. So it's always important to think about how do you create cash flow within your property portfolio while your property portfolio is negatively geared, rather than using your own disposable income. So yeah, as I said, depreciation is not bad. It's just that where do you extract the depreciation out from is what matters. You don't go out and buy apartments, house and land package to extract depreciation out of. What you really want is a high quality asset to extract depreciation out of, and then use that to offset the negatively geared properties of a premium suburb typically. And that's the sustainability that your portfolio really needs.
Yeah, awesome. And the other benefit of high income earners in terms of growing their wealth, number 4, and you'll find this come up quite a bit now, is self-managed super funds. So you're seeing a lot of people moving their funds themselves, into self-managed super funds so that they have a level of control over it. And Moss, what are some of the strategies you can use there? Again, speak to your self-managed super fund advisor and your accountant around setting something up. But tax planning, one big thing is tax planning and using your SMSF.
Definitely. Look, SMSF is not a new strategy. Like, I remember setting up my SMSF in 2014. So this is a really, really old trick in the book. It's just that, it's becoming mainstream a lot. You can use SMSF to a lot of things: property development, land banking, unit trust structures, buying properties. So there is a lot of the stuff that you can do with SMSF, especially as a high net worth investor, as a high income earner. Your SMSF strategy needs to complement your overall property investment strategy. It's not a parallel strategy. A lot of people basically think about this as, this is a parallel strategy that I'm going to run. It's not really the case. And so what I always say to people is, for SMSF, it's all about, creating that generational wealth or that net wealth effect that you're going to get, because you can't really get any money out of it. And so if you try creating cash flow within SMSF, it's not going to really help you, right? Yes, it's going to help you create that cash flow, but understand that super is all about growth. It's all about, growth is going to get you or bypass you or break or be better when it comes to shares. You compare super versus share market. Share market always delivers, cash on cash returns of almost 6 to almost 9 to 10% in certain years, right? And so if your super is going to beat that sort of returns, it's not going to be through cash flow. It's going to be through growth. So it's always important that growth is your prime strategy in super. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the key things that...
Sorry to interrupt there, Moss. Unless you already have access to your self-managed super and you're of retirement age, then you might be looking at cash flow there. But for most...
Cash flow. Or you're very close to retirement age and you're like 4 years away from retirement. And then, yes, it makes more sense to acquire something a lot more cash flow into super. Okay. Yeah. One of the key things that I say to people, and this comes back right to the crux of superannuation strategy. And again, this is no means a tax advice or an SMSF advice. Super is the best place for you to do property flips. When I say property flips, I'm not talking about renovations, because of course you're not allowed to do property developments or renovations typically in super, right? Unless you have the cash and you can do it, right? Why do I say property flips? What I mean is, majority of the times when you're going to buy a property in your own personal name, you're going to hold it for as long as possible, because the transactional cost of you selling it and, getting that money back, especially if you're not doing it through trust and if you're doing it through a personal name, is massive, because you get hit with this massive tax bill. That tax office basically is there at the end of the transaction, right? And that's why a lot of people default down to the property development route, or they never end up selling their properties because there are big tax bills. In super, the game changes. The tables turn, the seats turn, right? Because in super, the tax is capped at 15% and you get a discount rule available at 33%. And now all of this makes sense. And now if your property has gone from say 500 to 800, right? and you have that extra 400,000, it makes a lot more sense to flip it because the transactional cost is lower. You're capped at 15% tax, and so it's okay to pay that 15%, come out and do it again. Rinse and repeat makes a lot more sense in super than in your own personal capacity. A lot of people don't think about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And that's where high income earners play a really, really big role. I've seen them doing that quite actively, where especially if you're going down the path of like regional investing, where you're like, okay, I'm going to go in and out, because regional markets is all about short to medium term growth. It's not about typically very long term growth, right? And so if you're going to buy a cheap property around 400 or 500 or 600,000, and that property has grown by like 40% over 3 years time, then rinse, repeat, sell, come out, do it again, right? And that's the equity growth that you want to really catch out in super as well.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one to pull out and put some light on, because I don't think a lot of people are doing. But however, note that in your super, you only can buy particular types of properties.
Yes.
Be aware of that as well.
Yes.
You can do
yes. And so you know, working with someone who understands that, you know, there are postcode limitations in super, there are loan limitations in super, there are bare trust thing that you need to take into account. So, and look, I mean, the government is looking at closing this loophole, right? And so if you look at the federal tax budget or federal budget this year, they're talking about taking out of these, you know, discounts available to super, and they're talking about capital gains tax not taxed at 15% anymore, and they want to tax it at the full rate because they know that this is a strategy that a lot of high income earners are playing with, which is great, right? I think there is nothing wrong with it, and ultimately that's what you're there to do, right? So yeah. Number 5, trust or personal, you know, and we have the whole episode, we've talked about, you know, various different brokers, you've got the tax advisors. It's always interesting because a high income earner is always coming in from a tax lens. They would always think about their property portfolio from tax lens. It would not make sense from their perspective to buy a property under the trust, because it'd be like, well, if I buy property under a trust and it's negatively geared, the losses get stuck in the trust. And so I can't use those losses against my own personal income. And so I don't get any tax benefits. It's a very chicken and egg story, right? So yes, that's true that, you know, anything that sits in the trust and the losses basically get stuck in a trust. Understand that, you know, the rule of thumb when it comes to property portfolio investing is that your property portfolio needs to be neutrally geared, you know, especially when you're in the growth phase, right? And so you don't really want to run a negatively geared property portfolio, because then you're basically using your disposable income to pay it. And so while you might think that you might acquire a negatively geared property, ultimately you would want to go down the path of acquiring co-living properties or commercial properties or high cash flow block of units to offset these negatively geared properties, to create a tax or to create a trust that is basically neutrally geared and that can pass through generations. So it's important to consider what path is best for you. Is it the personal, or is it the trust, or is it both? Usually, majority of the times, it's a combination of the two that you need to consider, especially for high tax income earners or high income earners, on what path they're going to follow at different times in life. Yeah,
and I mean the trust aspect as well. Again, speak to your accountant. It's the distribution of incomes through to family members and other beneficiaries as well. So if you've got kids or you've got, you know, parents and spouses, there are definitely benefits there from that aspect as well. So it does need to become part of that long-term strategic tax planning. Again, if you're not doing tax planning with your accountant before the end of financial year, make sure you give them a call and make sure you sit down with them and go, how can I maximize my tax effectively? It's not about paying no tax at all. It's really good that you're earning good income, and, you know, Australia is such an amazing place because we pay such high tax. But just be mindful of how can you make it more efficient for yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Look, wrapping this up, I think those are golden words. You know, when you talk about property investing for high net worth investors or high income earners, it's not about tax saving. You know, you're not in the tax saving regime. It's about the net wealth creation journey. And so how are you going to improve your overall net wealth along the way? And so, of course, if you're going to speak to your accountant in silo, they're going to talk about tax minimization strategies. And you're going to speak to the broker and they're going to talk about the tax minimization strategies. So you need to bring all of these people into a single place and say, hey, it's not so much about me saving on taxes. I want to make the tax office my best friend because I want to actually create more wealth for the generations to come.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's the crux of the conversation today.
Absolutely. And so even if you're not earning a high income at the moment, these are strategies that you can definitely apply in your own portfolio. Right? Just be aware that with higher incomes, what you also need, you've got more of that tax aspect to consider as to how to be more effective and how to maximize your tax money there. So
definitely.
I hope this is helpful. If you have any other strategies, of course, we've only just highlighted 5 today. If you have any other good ones, please feel free to let us know and we could probably address it in another episode.
Thank you very much. And look, if you have any comments, questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you for listening to us. Stay safe, be kind, keep investing, keep smiling. This is Cheryl and Moss checking out. Adios.
Take care, everyone. Bye.